My name is Jason Watt, and I'm a full-time instructor in the Business Career College CFP program. It's pretty much all that I do is teach CFP, although I was doing a Chartered Life underwriter course yesterday, and I do take care of some of our continuing ed content as well. I think I said I'm in Edmonton, and this is might be our 20th go or 18th go. I can't even remember now at Capstone. So I've been doing this for a while now, although this will be the last time as well. And I'm sure some of you are aware of that. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on. So as mentioned, this is all recorded. I'll show you later on where to grab the recordings. So if you miss a chunk of a call, you can, or miss a call altogether, you can grab it afterwards. Does anybody have any burning questions before we get started with the program? And this is roughly what we're looking at for our agenda today. Okay, Mom, do you want to just say hi to everybody? Penny, my mother, is on the call here, and she's the one who would have communicated with many of you getting you enrolled.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, my name is Penny, and the other one you would have communicated with is Kelly. And Kelly is not on the call because he's at home looking after his twins till 7:30 in the morning, which is what he should be doing. But I just want to say good luck in the course. Many of you I've talked to, some of you I have not. This will probably be one of the toughest courses you've ever done, not in content, but I need you to manage your time and manage your assignments, because if you fall behind on this course, it is very, very, very hard to catch up. You will be hearing from either Kelsey, who also is not on the call, or me on a fairly regular basis. We are not doing this to torture you, but because we care and we want you to get through this silly course. So that's all I have to say. Good luck. We are here if you have any questions. You call us, you email us, you send me a carrier pigeon. Have a good day, everybody.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Mom. So, yeah, and they will be right on top of it when people fall behind or whatever the case is. We find that that's where we get our best results. So that's it, Jamie, right? So we have, a lot of administrative stuff to get through, including questions like what Elizabeth just asked, which is, do you have to buy the case study before you get your exam results? And yes, you'll have to do that, or you'll have to accept falling significantly behind. So if you don't want to spend, what are they, $40 for those case studies now? People that recently bought them. And to your question, Devansh, $50. Okay, I guess it depends where you are, because that's 3 different prices. To your question, Devansh, no, I'd rather not do that. And the reason is there's only about half of the folks on this call who just wrote the level 1 exam. If you have comments about it, I'm happy to do those in the forums. And the other concern I have, Devansh, is that because it's the non-disclosed exam, I find that sometimes when we sort of open the door to those conversations, that's where we get people talking about, that's very exact, Jacqueline, there you go, I think that's the right price. That's where we open the door to getting people to talk about their specific questions on the exam, and I would rather avoid that, Devansh. I think that that's a little bit of a minefield. But yeah, absolutely go on the forums. So Jill, you'll have to order it. You have to log in the same places you log in to register for the exam. So same way you registered for the exam, and from in there, you'll be able to do it. Now, yes, Devansh is right here that this always happens. We start our capstone fairly early, and I have a comment about this right on the slide here, right? So if it's not available right now, it will be available fairly soon. And yeah, if you have to call to order, that's okay. Okay, so yeah, so what you might want to do here, sorry, do you have a specific comment there, Mom? I see you're off mute.
No, I just typed in the number that they can call.
Okay, thanks.
And yes, I do actually, Jason. I would ask if everyone posts anyone on the forum. They do not ask Jason any questions about the exam. I have seen in the past where two people had their CFP withheld because they discussed the exam with somebody else, not us, but somebody else, and I would not want that to happen to anyone here.
Yeah, there is a very specific non-disclosure policy around exam questions. Okay, yeah, so that's okay. If you can't get the case today, it's not a panic. Okay, it is not a panic at all. I've got lots to do here. So ideally you have your case study now, and some of you do, okay? But if you don't, it is nothing to worry about right now, because there's actually some other homework to do in the interim. So if you're happier just to wait and order it online, maybe you'll wait until Monday or Tuesday, check then at the FP Canada website, and I've got enough reading that you can do over the weekend to keep you busy. Okay, and because we don't have the first chunk of homework due until June 26th, it is just not that big a deal. Okay, so nothing to worry about here. Is everybody clear on that? Okay. So an engagement letter is such a small thing, Esther. I'll talk about that. I will talk about what we're doing here. So yeah, what am I trying to accomplish here, Esther? So we are doing a comprehensive financial plan. Yeah, that's the purpose of the course, if you want to look at it that way. I have three things that I'm trying to accomplish here. One is you should walk away from this course with a better understanding of the financial planning process. You should come away with this, especially with analysis. So we spend a lot of time here on proper decision making and creating the best recommendations. That's where we're going to go through a robust, and we'll talk about this quite a bit, collection, analysis, and recommendation process. That is the thing that sort of the rest of the course is based on. Okay. My second priority is to prepare you for your CFP exam. And this is, if you do this course right, if you take the course seriously, and if I do a good job of what I'm supposed to do, then you will have your, you'll have a good head start on the CFP exam. And it's not uncommon, just like you, many of you wrote your level 1 last Thursday, the folks writing a CFP wrote their exams last Friday. And when I get comments from folks who wrote that exam, a lot of them say, yeah, I was happy that some of what we learned in Capstone showed up on the exam. So that's what's supposed to happen here. And then my third is that I don't want you to feel abandoned or lost or whatever the case is. That we'll have these calls as a weekly check-in. At least you have that. You should have regular communication with your grader. I believe at this point, everybody on the call has gotten an email introducing them to their grader saying, hey, Stephen and or Michael or whoever else is on the call, here is your grader. Here's how you communicate with that person. A little introduction that way. So you, Stephen, you have to do the Capstone course. You can't get to the CFP exam. Okay, so I guess are you asking about my Capstone course? Is that the question then? We do have those numbers, Stephen. I'd have to pull from Kelly. I don't know those numbers off the top of my head. So Esther, we try to keep that to email communications. The graders, like you, all have regular full-time jobs. Now, some of the graders do take phone calls, and you can ask your grader on a one-off basis, but my expectation of the graders is that they communicate by email. If they prefer to move things to phone, I know some of the graders are happy to do that. I personally don't. I simply don't have time to manage phone calls, and there's no such thing as a 5-minute phone call, right? Yeah, every grader is a practitioner, yeah. Or is, some of them are not dealing face-to-face with clients anymore. There's a couple that are in support roles now for financial advisors, but yeah, they're all either current practitioners or former practitioners who are now working with practitioners. Okay. Yeah, not academics, Esther, but actually folks working in the business. Yeah. Okay, so those are my goals, Esther. The letter of engagement is such a small little part of this course. That's the financial plan is the meat of the course. Oh, that's not a question we can answer here, Esther, and not in Canada, but hardly any fee-based financial planning in Canada, relatively, but it is happening. But that's not, yeah, not something we can address here. Okay, so what do you have to do to get through the course? Stay on schedule, and Penny already mentioned this. So number one here is that you maintain a diligent schedule. If you just do the work that's assigned in the timelines in which it's assigned, you will finish the course. This is a no surprises course. So what happens is, and I'll show you exactly how this works a little bit later on. The idea being that if you just do the work and follow the instructions, you will finish the course and you will go on to write your CFP exam. There will be no surprises here. Nobody does this and then doesn't write the exam. Okay. You want to check in with the case study regularly. You should have the Catherine Parker case study when you have it. You should have it handy somewhere all the time. I find this is a very common mistake people make, is they read the case study a couple times at the beginning of the course and then they stop reading it, and you can't do that. Catherine Parker is your client for the summer here. And you should get to know her as well as you would get to know any client that you're going to have sort of regular interactions with over the next few months. You'll want to make good use of the competency profile. Again, this document should be somewhere handy and refer to it regularly, even religiously, okay? So you want to follow it closely. That will really help you. There's a lot of guidance in the competency profile. I'll show you where to grab the competency profile in a few minutes. You want to keep your plan coherent. And this is where you should be reading what you're submitting. Your grader is not your proofreader, okay? Your grader is there to make sure that the financial planning you're doing is valid financial planning. But it is up to you to proofread what you're sending before you send it to your grader, okay? Person's not here to check on your grammar or your logic or whatever. They are here to make sure that your plan actually makes sense. And we'll talk more about this in a few minutes, but you want to manage your own schedule aggressively. You have to block aside enough time to get through the course. So that varies a little bit, Nathan, and I would say that you should be counting on about 120 hours of independent work, okay, outside of the 2-hour classes. So if you want to add the 2-hour classes into that, so I guess not then, Nathan, if you look at it that way. If it's a 12-week course, then no. I would say no, that the 10 hours does not include the 2-hour weekly classes. Now that varies a little bit, Nathan. Some weeks are going to be a little bit lighter and some weeks are going to be a little bit heavier. So we do get a variety of experiences there. I'm always interested to hear from people who track their time. A few people do. A few people use a tool like Toggle, for example, to track their time. And I find that when those people come back to me, normally it is about 110 to 130 hours. So I've seen this as pretty consistent, actually. Okay, some of you are here with other people from the same firm or other people with whom you have a relationship, and that's fine. I have no problem with communication with your peers. Communication is just fine. Okay, no issues with communication. But what you cannot do, you cannot submit any work that you did not build from scratch. That would be plagiarism. And the problem I have here is I have to turn people who do that into FP Canada. I do not have a choice in the matter. Okay. It is possible to work ahead of schedule, Phil. And if you're excited to do that, if you really want to work ahead of schedule, if there's people who, and I'm not going to open this up carte blanche, Phil, if you finish some work and you say, I want to work ahead of schedule, you fire me a note and I will actually open up the recording of the call from the winter semester, from the last semester, so that you can do that. But you can't do that until you finish this week's work. Does that make sense? So if I get requests from people where they say, my grader has looked at my week 1 work and they've said it's good, can you open up the week 2 call for me? I will open up the week 2 winter semester call, but only once I hear from people who are in that boat. Okay. So I have some questions for you then. No, Steve, most people will finish the capstone assignment, the actual financial plan, September 19th. And then there's a few other odds and ends that come after that normally take another, call it around 15 hours, 12 to 15 hours usually. That's that 3-week window there is for those other chunks. Okay. So did people pick up on this? I can't see who gives what answer to the question. There's no consequences to answering incorrectly, but okay. So about 3/4 of you have answered here. That's good enough for me. And yes, the latest you can be completed coursework is the 10th of October. We're looking for everything done by the 10th of October. And I'm going to add a comment at the very last slide here to emphasize the importance of this. Okay. So the webinars will normally run 2 hours. Today's will run about 90 minutes. I don't have extra teaching stuff that we do. And one of the reasons that I launched this, I know you just wrote your exam. It's been less than a week since, I guess it's been a week now, right? Since you wrote your exam. Today's Thursday. So it's been a week since you wrote your exam, because I find if we start the course too late, then we're really backed up against the exam as far as getting you ready to write your CFP exam. And I do not like that. I prefer if students have adequate time to properly prepare for the CFP exam. I also find that most people have a busier work life in September and October. It's not necessarily a good time to be doing a bunch of work of this nature. So as far as these webinars go, and this is where sometimes I have to curtail discussion, I can't let this class run longer than 2 hours because the next class always starts 2 hours and 15 minutes after this class starts. So if I've let this class run too long, then I have to just stop the class and go to the next class. So this is designed to give groups across the country the opportunity to participate. If you have to switch calls, if you are finding the 7 a.m. call doesn't work or whatever time it is where you are, then you just reach out to Rose and you say, Rose, I'd like to switch semesters or switch classes, and she'll help you out with that. Okay. And the webinars, I always record the webinars for the early session and make those available for playback. I usually don't make both sets available. I just usually make the early session ones available. Okay, so this is our course outline. There's a couple things on here that I may shuffle yet. Nothing that'll affect deadlines. I might shuffle some stuff that sits in the middle here. Got to figure that out a little bit. But regardless, what you need to worry about right now, what you need to be concerned with right now is June 26th. That is your first bit of homework. So what I'm looking for here is that you have submitted objectives and assumptions, and I'll show you that in a few minutes, to your grader. So you should be cracking open a Word document and sending that off to your grader. Does anybody on the call not have access to Microsoft Word? So Jacqueline, you can actually get Mac for Word, or Mac, or sorry, Word for Mac. It's the first comment I have there. If you're using Pages, then talk to your grader and see. Some of the graders are on Mac, so whoever your grader is, just reach out to that person and say, hey, look, what do we do if I'm using Pages here? That's what it's called, right? Pages? Is it Pages or Sheets on Mac? I cannot remember which one's which. But anyways, reach out to your grader and say, hey, I'm on a Mac here, and what can I do for you? You can even, with Pages, you can save that as a Word doc. You can do a save as .doc, and you can send that to your grader as well. But if your grader happens to be on a Mac, they might not mind collaborating with you on a Pages document. Okay. And then, of course, as was already mentioned, anywhere between 3 and 20. Esther, it depends on the grader. You can ask your grader if you want. Yeah. Okay. So the financial plan, this is going to be the bulk of the coursework. Will be done right here, September 19th. Yeah, you can come off mute, Phil.
Jade, what about if, I know the Excel spreadsheets are important for the course. What about using other programs for submitting work with the Capstone? Like
So
say if we have our company software that
yeah, I have a
tabulates.
slide on that in a few minutes, Phil. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks. Yeah. So the bulk of the work, though, where you're going to end up, where you're going to feel that I'm wrecking your summer, where you're going to curse me because you're not on the golf course enough or whatever, is going to be right about from early July, sorry, to early September. That's the bulk of the work. This will be the no golf season. This will be the no fun season. This will be the no time at the cottage season. Good? I mean, the capstone is its own kind of fun, but probably not the kind of fun most people are signed up for. All right. The finished product then. So your financial plan will look something similar to the completed financial plan, which I'll show you in a few minutes. Just funny enough, Dupert, right? We're going to normally see around 35 to 50 pages of work. I don't think you need to have a plan longer than 50 pages. I do see some people who write a lot and get plans up to 60 or 70 pages. I've occasionally seen one get into the low hundreds. I don't think that's necessary. I find usually if people go longer than about 45 or 50 pages, it's mostly self-inflicted. This is not supposed to be an exercise in formatting. Okay, so I don't care if you use a different font in this paragraph than this paragraph, or I don't care if your headings don't look the same all the way through or whatever, but I do need to be able to read what you submit. Okay, and the financial plan That is the bulk of the work. There's a little chunk that follows, and you can read that in the course text if you want. It's not a big deal. It's something that we will cover off later in the semester. Now, I do want to talk about the real financial plan versus the Capstone financial plan. So the Capstone financial plan, this is one of the places I find people get frustrated, and people are going to start to email me questions about this at about week 4 of the course. It's very normal that I get these frustrated questions. So I am going to do my best here to show you why you should not get frustrated with the workload in this course and what the alternative is. So the Capstone financial plan is going to take about 120 hours. It's going to cover all 6 areas of competency. So it's what we would call a comprehensive financial plan. And I would suggest that what you're really doing here is you're replacing about 3 years of financial planning. So those who write financial plans on the call, how many hours would you normally put into creating a financial plan for a client? Is it that little, Stephen? Yeah, I don't know if I would consider what you're cranking out at 1 hour to be a financial plan, but it's a valid point because you might be just doing some modular planning here, Stephen, right? I think somewhere around 8 to 10 hours is pretty typical. Okay. Yeah, something like that, Brandy, right? I think that's about right. So somewhere in that vicinity, anyways, sure, not 120, right? Whatever we do beyond that, okay, it's sure not 120. You would be broke if you put 120 hours into every client relationship every year. Is that a fair comment? And I totally understand that. So this is where you can't treat the Catherine Parker financial plan the same as you treat your client financial plans. What we're really doing here is replacing, I would say, about 3 years of financial planning, and you don't get any face-to-face meetings with Catherine, so you don't get any of the opportunity to actually talk over anything with her, although you do have a little face-to-face opportunity with Catherine right at the end of the course, but not while you're creating the financial plan. So you have 2 choices here, although you really don't anymore. You could, I guess, or we could have a 3-year capstone course where you actually work through a client's full financial scenario for 3 years and you put in the appropriate amount of work, or we can sort of compress this into a semester and finish a financial plan in that time. So does that make sense as far as why we do this very robust financial plan that we do here? Is everybody on board with that? Good stuff, Devansh, thanks. If you have a concern with this, this is the time to express that concern. If you come back to me in week 4 and say, Jason, I think it's garbage that you're making me do 120 hours of financial planning, I will say, I gave you the chance to ask that question in week 1 and you didn't ask it. Okay, that's it, John, right? Regardless, we can fight the battle about having to do the coursework, but it's the coursework we have to do. All right. That's good. Okay. You have a set of resources available to you, and I'll show you this all on Moodle momentarily. You have the competency profile, and I want to make sure that when you're using the competency profile that you're using version 3.0, especially those of you who just went through exam prep with me. So if you just wrote level 1, you may have downloaded version 2.1. That's the one that has the technical knowledge appendix in it. Okay, you should be using version 3.0. It's better, it has a better financial planning process in it. There is a bunch of stuff that's missing from 2.1 as far as the actual financial planning process, And if you try to use 2.1, you will be somewhat offside. Okay, so grab 3.0, not 2.1. If you pull it from my website, you don't have a choice. I'll show you that right away. There is the actual Catherine Parker case study, which we talked about already. On Moodle, I'll show you this stuff that's available there. And then I'm going to show you in a few minutes how the instructor feedback works. I try to be very fair with this. And then we already talked about group work. Again, it's okay to discuss, to do is this okay, or how did you do this, those kinds of things, but it's not okay to share work. You can't say, well, I'll do this Excel table and you do this Excel table and we'll submit that all together. Okay, so let's pop over to Moodle, the Learning Resources site, and I'll show you this. Everybody should have a login that would bring them to a web page that looks something like this. Okay, the login you'll come to from here. And I can't log in the same way as you do, so I can't really show you, but you'll log in here and then you'll have the little connect to my learning resources tab, and that'll bring you here. And once you're logged into this course, then you should be in Capstone Summer 2019. If you have a hard time logging in, there's a support chat right here. You can just click on the support chat and the good folks at Advanced Chat Solutions will help you. They're good with things like password resets or that type of thing. Although you can do a manual password reset, there's from the main Moodle page, there are instructions on how to do a password reset if you have a password that's not working for you or whatever. Okay. Okay. When you're logged in, few things. You have the discussion forum. So Devansh, if you want to ask your question about exam experience, you can ask that here. Then you have the document I just flashed up on the screen that shows the due dates. You might take this and transcribe it over into your own calendar if you like. Has all the class dates and all the due dates for assignments on it. You have the competency profile. I just mentioned this competency profile. This is the document that takes you through the sort of material elements of the financial planning process. And the big chunk of this starts on page 10 right here. Sorry, page 10 right here, fundamental financial planning. And you can read through this. In fact, this is part of your week 1 homework. This is one of the things you can do without the case study, is to read this document. And my assignment, my suggestion here is to read this twice, focusing on everything starting on page 10 and wrapping up on page, I think it's 37 where that section ends. We'll get there. 36, sorry. So pages 10 to 36. Okay, and those chunks tell you what goes into the actual financial plan. So I want to give that a read a couple of times and you'll be good to go as far as at least knowing what background goes into your financial plan. There is a textbook for the course. You can give it a read if you want. There's not a ton more in there than what we go through on this class. It does talk about the post financial plan assignments a little bit. So if you want to see that, go ahead. Then I have a Word template here for drafting the plan. You can grab this if you want. It's a version of a financial plan that I did a few years ago that has all the right headings in it to match the competency profile. It's one way you can use, or one way you can prepare the plan. You can copy and paste the headings from it if you want, and then a version of the Excel again that shows you how you could do up your Excel, and then presenting the plan. So this is basically the Word document with all of the kind of fluff moved out of it. A one-page infographic that summarizes the Don and Cynthia financial plan, a link to the projection assumption guidelines. You'll need to use these a little bit in this course. They have return assumptions and mortality assumptions, inflation assumptions. It's worthwhile to have access to them. We'll talk about assumptions more in a couple of minutes. And then don't worry about these last two videos just yet, but there's a couple of videos here about putting together the more complex parts of the course. Okay, so those are the sort of initial course documents. The big ones that you need right now for this week's homework are the competency profile and the presenting the plan document. Those are part of the reading for the week 1 homework. Okay, and then what'll happen is when we're done the class, a little bit later on today, I'm not sure exactly when I'll get this done, it depends how long class goes, but I will post up everything from today right here. This is always going to be the case. If you like to have the PowerPoint deck in advance, you can actually go here and you can click on this PowerPoint deck. You can download it. It's available for everybody on the call. It's the PowerPoint deck that I'm working from right now. So you could use that to take your notes if you wanted to, or you can get a little preview of what we're going to talk about in class that day. That's available for everybody. It's normally posted up the evening before class starts. Especially when we get into people actually submitting assignments, I normally don't prepare it until the evening prior, just because I don't know what some of the feedback I have to give people looks like until I see that first set of assignments come in. And then the other things you'll see here will be the recording from this class, and it'll look something like this. You won't have access to this, but it'll look something like this. You'd have access to the recording. That'll just take you over to YouTube, and so you can watch the recording there. Or you have access to the screenshots from the day. And again, you can click on that. It's a PDF document. And you'll see it looks very similar to what we started off with here. No need to reinvent the wheel. I don't know why it's not coming up. But anyways, it's a PDF document that shows the actual screen grabs from in class. So if you prefer just to sort of follow along and listen, then you can do so that way. Okay. That's good. You can see it's the same kind of thing, right? All right. Are there any questions about those online resources? If you can't log into Moodle, get that sorted out. Yeah, it's supposed to give you what you need, Jeanette. I don't know if I want it to be functional. That's my primary concern, okay? That you've got everything you need there and that you are never, as I said, lost while you're working your way through the course, okay? All right. Yeah, so I'll talk about holidays a little bit later on, Esther. I have a specific comment about time away or holidays or whatever. The short answer is yes, 10 days is manageable. Okay. Okay. The question that Phil had earlier, it's a very common question, and this concerns why we use Excel here. So what do I like about Excel? Well, you can do anything in Excel. It's a very, very robust bit of software. For your question earlier about the Mac, Jacqueline, the problem I find with the Mac is that if you're using numbers, numbers is not as robust as Excel. Numbers does not handle multi-page relationships well, and numbers does not respond as easily to sort of long data sets. So numbers, everybody will tell you numbers is the same as Excel until they actually start to use it, okay? And this is where you might look at, it's inexpensive now. You can get a Microsoft 365 subscription for 20 bucks a month. You might do that just for the duration of the course, for example, because you'll find, especially if you need help, that Excel is an easier place to get help, okay? They look very similar. They're probably 90% similar. It's those two problems that I find are most common. So it's easy to work stuff into Excel and move that into Word. I teach Excel, and so will Rachel, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. You get to see all the math that's happening. If there's a problem with the math, you can solve it that way. You can fix it there in Excel, whereas in your financial planning software, that's not the case. It's also a very useful tool. I find many people take this course and come away and say, wow, I can't believe that I never knew Excel before. I can't believe that I never had access to this great tool. It does a lot, and it has a ton of flexibility in it. Stuff that is easy to adapt to the scenarios that you would see day in and day out with your clients. The downside, it can get very complicated. If you're trying to be very cute with Excel, you can build very complex formulas that are not so easy to use. And it can take a lot of time. It's very time consuming to build what you need in Excel. You'll never hear anybody say, and who made the comment about, an hour of work in the financial planning software before. You'll never hear anybody say in Excel, yeah, it took me an hour to build this super complicated spreadsheet. Okay, that's not how it works. Okay, with the financial planning software, so what do I like about it? Well, you probably know it already, Phil. That's why you asked the question, right? Because you spent a lot of time working with I can't remember what your FP Solutions. That's not right, is it? What's it called, Phil? Help me out. PFP. You spent a lot of time working with PFP, right? So you know the ins and outs of it. It has a lot of shortcuts in it, and sometimes you can actually do work here and either import or export into Excel. So especially if you're working with Razor or Cascades, I believe both of those have import to and export from functions for Excel. Okay. The big downside is it just won't do everything you need. You will have to use some Excel. I give everybody this opportunity. I say, if you can get the financial planning software to do everything you need, you go ahead. But I will ask you questions about what's happening within the software. So if you simply pull a spreadsheet and you say, I put some numbers in, and this is the spreadsheet that came out, I will ask questions about the math. My expectation here is that you understand the math that created the final set of calculations that your software is producing. Okay. And I've never seen a financial plan where somebody was able to do the whole thing in Excel and sort of push, I would suggest, enough analysis out that we could actually work with that analysis. Now, maybe you're the exception here. I don't know. But you can, certainly one of the things that I see here is people will go into their financial planning software to do insurance needs analysis. A lot of financial planning software has really good insurance needs analysis tools, as an example. Yeah, that's fine, Jeanette. But again, my comment here is when you put numbers into NaviPlan and you get outputs, are you going to be able to communicate to your grader what happened to generate those outputs? So if your grader says, how did this number show up here? Are you going to be able to answer that question? Okay. And because NaviPlan is not an answer, Jeanette. Good? Yeah, I'm okay with that blended approach, but you do have to understand the analysis that went into this. Okay, that's good. Yeah, and in fact, I can show you this. There's an article, although it's quite dated now, but in the 2009 March edition of the Journal of Financial Planning, there's an article in there that specifically discusses the errors that financial planning software makes. And we find about a 70% error rate with financial planning software doing one narrow set of calculations. So that might be something you take into account yourself. Okay. So what am I looking for here in terms of submissions and feedback? Okay, thanks, Francis. I see. This is how this is really the course. When I talk about how the course works, this is what you need to know. You will create a Word document. And the Word document you start, when you start your week 1 homework, will be the foundation for the rest of the course. So you'll open a brand new Word document. You will start your week 1 homework in there. You will send that Word document to your grader. Your grader will send it back with comments, which I'll talk about momentarily. And then you adjust for those comments and send back your week 2 homework in the same document when it's ready. Okay, that is the flow of the course. That's how it's going to work. And then you'll do the same for week 3 and for week 4 and for week 5 and so on. So you're just building this thing out. And by the time you're done, by the end of week 11, you'll have a completed financial plan in one Word document. I don't need to see that, Phil. There's no reason to do it in a different color because you're only chunking it out into weeks. The grader will know what they're looking at, right? So I know when it's week 3 that I'm looking for financial management collection, Phil, right? There's no need for you to do it in different colors. It is useful to include titles or headers or something like that. That's really for your own reference. And remember, Phil, I said earlier that one of the expectations is that you submit a plan that has some flow to it, a plan that makes sense, where your analysis refers properly back to your collection. If you don't put titles in your collection, you will get lost reading your own financial plan. Okay, that's good. I'm sure that everybody in the call has read something periodically. Nobody wants to read a 50-page document that has no titles in it or no divisions of the sections you're reading. Okay, that is not helpful. Now, as far as Excel help goes, you can't just send me, if you're having trouble with Excel, I'm happy to help, but you can't just send me an Excel sheet and say, how do I? You've got to say, you got to give a specific question. And the specific question would be, for example, I can't get cell C6 to do this. That's what I need to have in order to be able to help you with Excel. The instructor then will use review comments. Most of the instructors do. A couple of them do things differently, but most of the instructors will use review comments. And there's no grading here. There's no need for a grade. You won't get an A or a B or a C or whatever. It's simply a matter of you either wrote a financial plan that met the standard, which means you worked with your grader, you submitted work that matched the standard, that everything sort of flows as you work through it. Okay? If you just ignore me and ignore your grader, then you won't pass the course. Okay? That's it. And the most common reason people don't pass the course is because they don't finish. They just don't do the work. But if you can make a commitment to actually get it all done, it will get done. Here's how this is going to look. I sit down, I open up my new Word document, and I write this thing out. I write out my objectives for Mike and Jen. This is the week 1 homework. You're not Mike and Jen, and you're not doing things on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, but this is what I would submit for my week 1 homework. So I submit this as a Word document to my grader. Okay, and then my grader says, okay, using review comments, my grader says, hey, Jason, I think actually this thing right here that you put in financial management, because it talks about them getting hurt or sick, that's probably a risk management objective. Okay. And now you would come back and you would say, okay, assuming that I don't disagree with my grader, and you could say, no, that's a financial management objective because, and you better have a good reason for it. Okay, there better be some rationale here, or you just make this change, or you add a risk management section and you say, yeah, I see it. That's actually about, if one of them gets hurt or sick, that's fundamental risk management. And it's easy to make that change. Just make that change and move on with it. Okay, as mentioned, should all be in one Word document. And my other comment here, I know you're sick of hearing this, and I know Word has gotten better about this, but save often and keep a backup. And what I would suggest you probably should be doing here is something like this, that you might save your Catherine Parker. So you might say, all right, this is the Catherine Parker objectives that I'm working on the 16th of June, like that. And then when it comes time to do other work later on, you save Catherine Parker and you do financial management on whatever that's going to be, the 30th of June. Okay. So you're always building out like that, and you'll have maybe multiple versions, but that's okay. And then, as I mentioned, you're always submitting corrections along with the following week's homework. Any questions there? Does anybody not understand that flow of homework, feedback, and assignment? No, just one document, Patrick. You should be working at least with your grader. Now, what I will do, so Patrick, with my students, I will delete the comments that have been addressed, right? So if I have made a comment and you've dealt with that comment, there's no reason to keep it in there. Okay, so if you had this comment previously and I say, yeah, it's good, it's done, I will delete it out of there so you won't see it again. Okay. No, Mike, I prefer, so unless you've got a million corrections, if you've got a really busy week with lots of corrections in it, then you might submit it earlier, but I would generally prefer to see corrections submitted alongside the following week's homework. So that is all one submission. So in my perfect world, Mike, my students are going to submit 11 submissions. Okay. Maybe 12. I guess that's 12 submissions, right? But whatever, it's going to be a fairly narrow set of submissions. But I do understand sometimes people need a little bit of guidance. And again, I don't want you to feel abandoned. If you do some work and you say, I'm not sure if this is actually addressing the problem, then yeah, you should submit that sort of midstream. That's okay. Okay, so everybody now should have an email from Penny introducing them to the course grader. And one of the things that the graders will generally do is they'll send an email to you saying, here's how I operate in particular. And here's how my feedback cycle works. Okay. And for the graders, here's when I'm on holidays, because the graders do take holidays, they're allowed. Okay, all that good stuff. So no, you won't have it yet, Jacqueline. You'll get it in the next 3 or 4 days. Okay, that's good. All right. For the non-case study portions, like I said, if you want to read up on them, you can go read the course textbook. But once we're done the actual Catherine Parker work, there is about another 10 to 15 hours of work to do. It's not insurmountable. It's just something that has to get done that way. A lot of this is specifically designed to prepare you for the CFP exam, especially the math and multiple choice on the CFP exam. Okay. The competency profile then, I've mentioned this document already. And again, to reinforce this, you should be using 3.0, not 2.1. If you're using 2.1, delete it and replace it with 3.0. And there are sort of three, and I'll show you this in the actual competency profile in a minute. There are three chunks in the competency profile broken up into 7 financial planning areas. And what's going to happen here is we're going to spend most of June and early July in collection. That'll be more familiar. That'll be the thing that you say, yeah, this is something I do all the time. It'll be very familiar to you from your financial planning software. You just won't have the financial planning software as such a crutch to work through it. And then for most of July and early August, you'll be working on analysis. This will be where most people experience the most pain. This will be where there will be a lot of why do you say that? A lot of math or supporting math. A lot of did you consider? This will be really the most learning that happens in the course. This is where I find people generally have taken the most shortcuts in the past or generally have the most to learn here around analysis. And then recommendation, this should be pretty light actually. This hardly ever is a big workload. This is going to be for August and September. And this should be pretty easy based on good analysis. If you did good analysis, your recommendations should just flow. Okay. That's good. And we'll watch the language here. This is something that I will pick on a little bit. When you're writing your collection, you're talking about what's true right now or what we know will be true or what will be true if nothing else changes. So Catherine, on your current path, here's where you're going to end up, which is different than analysis. Analysis where you say, hey, Catherine, if you change this, then this will happen. Or because you're in this position, this might happen. Okay, so these are more things to consider than they are certainties. And finally, we say, Catherine, then you should do this. Doing this will prevent this risk we talked about in analysis from becoming a big problem, or doing this will prevent this thing we talked about in collection from turning out the way that doesn't match your objectives. Okay, so it's this language, what is true or will be true, and then these sort of conditional statements, and then finally, here's what you should do, Catherine. And let's pop over to the competency profile real quick, and I'll show you an example of this, or maybe I'll show you the supporting language for this. So here's the competency profile. And like I said, starts on page 10. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. We're going to look at investment planning specifically, but you'll see it's broken down into 7 different areas, fundamentals, and then the 6 financial planning components, financial management, and then investment planning. This is where we want to stop for a second. So what should be happening here is that investment planning, you would collect all the client information. And as an example, one of the things you're going to do here is you're going to say, this is what you have right now, Catherine. Here's a summary of your assets. And this is a pretty big deal for Catherine. Those who have seen the case study already know that she's got about $3 million or $2.6 million or whatever of invested assets. This comprises a good chunk of her net worth. And telling this story for Catherine is fairly important. And then hand in hand with that, you would say, and Catherine, here's your current asset allocation. This is all what we would call quantitative information. That is, we can represent it on a table, facts and figures, charts, lists, that kind of thing. Then, and I'm not going to cover every item on here, then we're going to skip to the qualitative portion. This is still collection. And this is where you would say, okay, Catherine, looking at your statements of invested assets and some of the things you said in our interview, here is what I see in terms of your experience, attitudes, biases, and objectives. Here's what I see in terms of how you have made the decisions or not made decisions as to what assets you hold. Good, and a few other qualitative items here as well. So this is still collection. Okay, now I find a lot of people resist this a little bit. A lot of people say, well, I'm actually doing some analysis here. And sure, that's fine. You can use that word, but this is not analysis in the context of the financial planning process. This is where you're taking the information you have from the client and you're synthesizing that into a description of who the client is. This is still about what is true. Okay. Again, that's one of those hurdles I find people sometimes have a tough time with, is they say, well, that's really analysis. No, that you can't use the word analysis in that manner here. Yes, it's an analytical process, but it's not analysis in the financial planning process. Okay, this is analysis. Analysis now is where we say, okay, Catherine, what do you have right now for, based on what you have for invested assets, what can we learn about this and where can we go from here? What are some of the choices available to us? And as an example, we would say, what's what we're going to work on here? This 2.110. So back in 1105, you laid out the table of invested assets. And here you would say, okay, based on that table of invested assets, is your asset allocation right for who you are? Now, you already did asset allocation in collection. That was done in collection. And who you are, that was also done in collection. So it should be a matter now of taking the information you've already used or already prepared and comparing that information to the sort of reality here. Okay. And then you would take that and you would say, okay, here's a potential strategy. You might say, yeah, your asset allocation does not match who you are. So we have to work through a strategy to address that. Now, you're not saying this is what you should do. You're saying here's one way or two ways or three ways that you could address that deficiency or address that disconnect. And then that's where most of the work should have been done. And then you would say, okay, based on all of that, Catherine, here's what you should be doing. This is where you actually would start to sort of should all over Catherine. And this should be a well substantiated set of recommendations. You've done your good analysis. You can see the recommendation is very short. It is, as I suggested, it's analysis that's going to be the bulk of the work in this course. Collection is some work, but it's not going to be as much as analysis. Okay. Any questions there? Do you see why I want you to read that thing twice? Hope everybody's with me there. Okay. So there will always be, with every PowerPoint deck, a slide that looks like this right up until the last class. the homework slide, the dreaded homework slide. And this is where I will lay out what the current week's homework is. You're going to read the case study and become familiar with it. You're going to read the competency profile at least twice. Grab the Word template from Moodle, so that set of resources again, and at least give a quick review of the projection assumption guidelines. And then the actual bulk of the homework here, the thing that will be an actual deliverable, would be to start that Word document and send to your grader your list of, Catherine's objectives. And those objectives will be broken down by financial planning component. So here are Catherine's financial management objectives. Here are Catherine's risk management objectives. Here are Catherine's retirement planning objectives. Now, I will mention for Catherine, this is an area that people sometimes struggle with, that because Catherine is already retired, there is some overlap between her financial management and her retirement planning. Okay, but it's not good enough to say retirement planning is done. Retirement planning is not done for Catherine. She still has, she's only 70 or 71, she still has 20 plus years of potential retirement. It's not fair to say that her retirement planning is done. Okay, that's good. So you may have to pick and choose items that fit into her financial management or retirement planning, and that's fine, but don't come back to me and say, I don't need to do retirement planning because she's already retired. That is not correct. The other thing is, and we'll talk about assumptions in a minute, the other part of the homework is just the start of your list of assumptions. You can look at the sample plan to see that. Okay, so what's an objective then? When we use this word objective, well, it should be something the client wants to accomplish, not something the planner wants to accomplish. Okay, you might have things you want to accomplish, but don't confuse your objectives with the client's objectives. Okay, if she doesn't say, this is something I want to do, then it probably doesn't fit on this list. Okay, and as much as possible, we want to build these out into measurable objectives, or if you want, SMART objectives. Okay, so do we know what she's trying to accomplish? When she's trying to do it, or when she wants it done? And how would you know when it's done? So those would be the things that I would suggest would normally accompany a properly stated objective. Okay, probably the most common error I see here in week one is the first point, is that I find students want to bring a bunch of other objectives in. Just use the objectives that Catherine has presented. You should end up with somewhere around 10 objectives in total for the whole plan. That's approximate, okay? All right, that's good. Okay, what's an assumption then? So an assumption would be something that we don't know, but we will need to write the financial plan. It's not a fact. So for example, Catherine is age 71 is not an assumption. Okay, she tells you she's 71. You'll work that into your plan later on. This is the other thing that I find people, exactly, Phil, mortality is an assumption, right? You better not know Catherine's mortality, Phil, right? That's probably, as much as that might make it easier to write financial plans, that's probably not the kind of service your clients pay you for, okay? So yeah, mortality is a good example. Returns are assumptions, at least future returns, right? Past returns are not assumptions, that's facts. Inflation is always an assumption. We never know what inflation is going to be. All right. So I wasn't suggesting that, Phil. I'm not suggesting you're doing something untoward with your clients. You should have a fairly short list of assumptions right now. Okay. I find that people go nuts here sometimes. Do not go nuts. You should only have about 5 to 10 assumptions. You don't need to write the whole financial plan here. I see sometimes where people want to write the whole financial plan. So Shannon, there's that projections, assumptions, guidelines. That's exactly what that document is, right? And that document is linked from within Moodle. Yeah, so that's exactly what this document right here is. Projection assumption guidelines. That's your, yes, that's 100% what that is. Okay, that's good. Now, what's missing from that document is reasonable real estate assumptions. And something to consider is that you do have a possible source for real estate assumptions. So you can use the Victoria Real Estate Board, Housing Price Index. It's easy to Google it if you just Google that. You can get some, at least some historical real estate information is available. Now you want to be careful here because it's historical information, and as we know, past performance is no guarantee of future results, but at least it gives you a starting point for this discussion. Okay, that's good. Okay, what's next then? What are we looking for here? As mentioned, you're going to submit your assumptions and objectives to your grader. This should be about a page of information at the most. Maybe a page and a quarter, but it shouldn't be pages and pages of stuff. Okay, we have class again 2 weeks from now on, I guess that's 2 weeks less a day from now, on June 26th. That's Wednesday, June 26th. Same link. The class link, Elizabeth? So you would have gotten an email from Rose with the class link on it. Elizabeth, it's the same link for next time. So the link you use today, it's the same link always. Yeah, that's it, Tiffany. You're only using the case study, the Catherine Parker case study for your financial plan. There is no other information. Okay. So yeah, you're using the Catherine Parker case study to create all the work in this course up until mid-September. Okay. Okay. So the June 26th is also the homework deadline. And if you've not used Excel in a while, maybe crack Excel open and make sure you're comfortable with it. If you are not good with Excel, I will make my qualifying statement here. First off, I will teach some Excel in class. Secondly, I have a lot of supporting stuff for Excel that's available just within the course material. But we do have a completely optional, that's the Catherine Parker case study, Arden, that's the same thing. Catherine Parker is the philanthropic retiree. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's exactly it, Steve. That's what the plan example is for. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right, that's good. So if you want to do that, Elizabeth, you can watch the tutorial. There is a tutorial video on that list of resources I showed. It's long, it's like 7 hours. So, but there is a table of contents right at the beginning, or a table of contents right in the Word document below it. Okay. So that gives you an idea anyways, what you're going to be doing with Excel. Like I said, this tutorial is completely optional. I think Kelly's already sent out the registration information for it. We didn't used to do it, but I have a good Excel instructor who's willing to do this. This is a very reasonable price for a 4-hour Excel class. And also, it's something that, yeah, we really built this to demand. Okay. If you are going to do that Excel class, my suggestion is find a way to give yourself a setup where you can watch the call on one screen and work through Excel on another, whether it's 2 computers or a computer and a tablet, or even an iPhone and a tablet, or if you have a 2-monitor setup or a 3-monitor setup or a 16-monitor setup or whatever, you can run those things. Okay, that's good. So if you wanted to do it after July 11th, Jacqueline, you wouldn't be able to do it live, but you would be able to get the recording after that. Okay, so if you want to have that accessibility, you can catch the recording afterwards. You have to pay for it then. Yeah, a little bit different, Lisa. She does a little bit fancier stuff, so I don't do any like HLOOKUP or VLOOKUP. I think she does HLOOKUP and VLOOKUP in those classes, for example. But yeah, it's similar. So that's why I say it's completely optional. If I felt like it was a must, then I would say that differently, and we would build it into the course pricing. Okay, that's good. It really is something that we built back to student demand. Okay, yeah, so most classes, the first hour will be kind of like what we've done for this hour and a half, and the second hour will be a teaching topic as per the class schedule. And again, you can see those teaching topics way back in the slide that showed the class schedule, although I'm going to adjust them a little bit. With the size of class we have, it's too ambitious, honestly. So we're probably not going to do farm succession at all as an example. We'll need more time to do defined benefit pensions, just because in a very large class like this, stuff like that takes longer. All right. Okay, so I have a question for you here. So what's our first due date for homework? All those questions just racking up there. That's good. Okay, it is June 26th. June 26th is the first due date. Okay, that's what we're looking for, is homework submitted June 26th. And I'm glad nobody picked a later date. And then a couple of other comments here. So for Students who did the capstone previously, and I think we've got about 30 of them on the 2 classes. There's quite a few folks who are here who started capstone at some point in the past and for whatever reason fell off the rails, and that happens. Like I said, there's not 2 people on it, there's about 30 on the sessions here between the morning and afternoon session. So if you're in that boat, you're here because you had a hard time with scheduling previously. And I wouldn't limit this advice to folks who are repeat students, but I would suggest this is something that everybody can benefit from. Is right now, you go to your calendar app. Now, I know it's potentially more hours than this some weeks, but this is something I have seen people have good success with. Is you go to your calendar app right now and you set every Friday or whatever day, pick a day, I don't care what day it is. Honestly, Saturday and Sunday are probably not ideal for this kind of thing. It probably has to be a work day. I know some of you work in a bank environment where you have less control over your schedule, so you have to manage that. But however you're going to do this, you find roughly 10 hours per week in your schedule where you say, I am going to do nothing but capstone here. You book that aside right now, and you be honest with your calendar here as to what's actually sustainable. Okay, you're not going to magically have 10 more hours appear every week. What is not going to get done because you're doing this? Okay, that's good. Now, the other is there's about 50 people between the morning and afternoon class who wrote level 1 last week, wrote level 1 a week ago, and you're waiting on those results right now. So hopefully everybody passes, and if that happens, great, then we sort out payment then for whatever you still have to pay for the remainder of the course. We did try to structure the payment in a sort of shared risk way here. I think we came up with what's a fair model for payment. I didn't hear any complaints about it. If you fail, honestly, other than your own professional development, not much point in completing Capstone. Okay. You should focus then on rewriting level 1 in the fall. It's all you can really do at this point. And I know there's sort of a mixed bag of outcomes for passing level 1 in the fall, but I would suggest it's worthwhile because at least you can lock in your progress. You can get that QAFP, which I think will become fairly important actually once Ontario finishes its legislation and other provinces start to pick up the ball there. So the problem with it is, Jacqueline, that you don't get the same sort of amount of progress you get with the level 1 for doing the QAFP. You still have to do a little bit more work afterwards. Okay, but I still think it's worth doing. I think that the problem here is if you don't pass level 1, then you really end up with whatever work you've done to this point with no meaningful gateway. Okay, I believe that's right, Elizabeth. I need Kelly to answer that question for me. I cannot remember all the different iterations. Okay. All right. That's what I would suggest, Jackie. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the right thing. Okay. I know. And the stress, I think honestly, the stress is worse than the money there, but what do I know? Okay. Any other questions there for the 2 groups of people in those results or in those categories? Okay. And then my last comment here is, yeah, no pressure, Elizabeth, right? My last comment is in general about finishing the course. Now, at this point, this is the very last time that there will ever be a capstone course run for me or any other provider related to the CFP, unless Financial Planning Canada goes back and redoes the program in 10 years again or whatever. But as of right now, there is no reason why there would ever be another capstone course. Doesn't matter who it's with. There is no value, no point, no utility to this course after January 1st of 2020. Okay. So if you don't finish in this semester, if you're not done by October, okay, and again, our homework deadline of the 10th of October, then any work you've done here and any money you put out is wasted. That's good. And I'm not going to do refunds. So if you get into August and you say, well, Jason, I only ever did 3 assignments, I didn't get any further than that, I don't think it's fair for you to come back and ask for a refund at that point. And I am telling you right now that I will not give refunds in those cases. I've still had to pay the grader associated with taking care of your assignment. Rose and Penny and Kelly still did a bunch of work. The actual grading of the assignments is only about half the overall work for this thing. Okay. And I am leaving the country. Okay. This is not to get away from you guys, but I am leaving the country on the 18th of October for more than 2 weeks. And this is a cold, hard fact. I'm going to Northwest Europe, Phil. This is a cold, hard fact, and I will not have any opportunity while I'm gone. I'm actually doing something a little bit workish while I'm there. I will not have any opportunity while I'm gone to take care of Capstone at all. That's good. This is more than fair. We didn't adjust any deadlines for this or anything like that. This is just a cold, hard fact that there will be no point, there'll be no benefit or whatever to submitting any work after the 10th of October. And my departure just gives us a little bit more of a clean break as far as those deadlines go. Okay. And as mentioned, it'll take you at least 120 days of, or sorry, about 120 hours of work, not days, 120 hours of work to complete the course. This will ruin your summer. Okay. That is simply it. And I find, again, it's very common. Students come back to me afterwards and they say, wow, I can't believe how much spare time I have now that Capstone is over. Okay. So what will this tolerate? There you go, Jacqueline, right? Okay. So what will this tolerate as far as absences? I find that the maximum sort of absence is about 2 weeks. That's generally what we can handle here. I find any longer than that is too much. If you know you have a 3-week or a 1-month holiday over the summer, I don't know if you have some plan to work around that, but you've got to manage that. No, we don't, that's not a bad idea, but we don't have that. No. There's no, like, you're looking, there used to be, honest, I don't know your name, sorry. There used, and I don't know why you asked that on private chat. Just let me bring that up into public chat because it's a good question. There is a function like that in Moodle. It was, you could do an iCal in Moodle, but the problem with it was that because we have people in 4.5 time zones taking classes with us, it never worked out, right? So it became more confusing than simplifying. Okay. I don't know if you know, but iCal's a little bit, yeah, you can join the meeting from anywhere in the world, Tiffany. And I have had that. I've had students join from, I think we've had 5 continents and at least 15 countries now. Yeah. Okay. I have had students have a baby, get married, get divorced, buy a house, renovate a house, buy a business, all that while they've gone through the course. Those things can all happen, but you have to be super disciplined about your time. Okay. Yeah, you could do the later call, Elizabeth. You could do the one that starts at 9:15 Mountain, right? You pick out how that works. All right. That's good. Um, yeah, just let whomever know, let Rose know, Elizabeth, that you're doing that. Okay. And you will, over the summer, one Friday afternoon, it will be a beautiful day, Jacqueline, even in Toronto, and you'll look out the window and you'll say, that guy and this terrible course, they are ruining my summer and ruining my life. My family or whoever hates me now because of this. And by extension now, I hate Jason. That will happen this summer. I promise you, you'll probably grow to hate Microsoft Word and Excel as well. Good? All right. Any other questions, comments, worries, fears, concerns, anything in that ballpark? Yeah, genuinely, Dan, there's a lot of learning to happen here. So normally, Brandy, they're posted by about 3 hours after the end of class. It does depend a little bit on what I can manage, but that's normally about what it takes. Depends where you are, Esther, and how much attention you can pay while you're away. I know for me, when I go to the, yeah, that will depend again. That's not really what I meant, Esther. You can absolutely watch the calls from Europe. I have actually run these calls from Europe myself. Okay. So that's not a problem. There's no geographic limitation, but I would suggest it's more a question of, like, if you're going to be at the pool side and there's a lot of noise around, that's probably not the best time to try and attend a class. Okay. Yeah, perfect. So I would like to thank everybody very much for joining us. I hope we're off to a good start here. I know it's a significant commitment of time and money. You put a lot of faith in us to get you through the course and prepare you well for the CFP exam. So I do appreciate that. And I know some of you know us well, and some of you, this is your first experience with us. And again, I appreciate whether you're coming back on a return basis or whether this is a complete experiment for you. If you heard anything on the call today that makes it sound like you should not be here, whether it's that we're not the right capstone provider for you, or whether it's that you just don't think the course is manageable right now, and then by extension, never, then you've got to address that right away, okay? And we can fix those problems right now. It's not too late to fix those problems, but if you get 6 weeks into it and you say, shoot, I should have said something in week 1, it's much more difficult for me to come to a satisfactory resolution then. That's good. But if right now you're thinking, I'm not in the right place, now is the time to let me know. Okay, and I previously talked about this very important comment. This, I don't want to get dragged into something here that is not right, that is awkward for all of us. I hate to see an ethics violation. Okay, yeah, that's the right attitude, Phil. All right. Okay, so we got most of our votes in. The actual answer here is it is okay to discuss your work with colleagues. That's perfectly acceptable to discuss your work with colleagues. Perfectly fine, okay? What is not acceptable, though, is to work together on your actual financial plan. Okay, I'm going to wrap up the meeting there. Thanks very much. Right, so you need the course content for this course, Tiffany, is in the course called Capstone Summer 2019. That's the course you want to be in. CFP prep is, yes, for the CFP exam prep. You can play around in there if you want, but I don't know why you would right now. So, yeah, thanks a lot, Tab. Thanks, everybody. Perfect. Yeah, really appreciate it. And yeah, it was good. Lots of people on before class started this morning. It was nice to have that ability to start at a reasonably sort of on-time hour, especially for such a large group. Okay, we'll see you again in just under 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody. I got to get everybody out of here to get for the next call. For those that are on the phone, so I'm just going to unmute the folks that are on the phone here. Lori, I've got you off mute right now. Are you there?
I'm here.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, so for those that are here for the late call, I think there's a few of you that are logged in right now for the late call. I'm going to be ending the meeting and restarting the meeting. I'm going to kick you off the call. Okay. Flora, I'm going to bring you off mute as well. There we go. Okay, so for both of you, are you at a laptop or a desktop?
No, I'm at a desktop.
So is there...
Laptop.
Okay, so for the laptop, it's easy. Every laptop... Yeah, everybody else can go ahead. Thanks. Yeah, if you're not on the phone, get out of here. Okay. Yeah, so I'm sorry, I forgot who answered which question there. No, if I don't know, Esther, when you got kicked out, probably not. I think that you had all your questions answered. But you could watch the last 5 minutes of the recording to make sure, Esther, if you wanted. So on the laptop, it's easy. Every laptop has onboard sound. So all you have to do is sort of in the top left, actually, I'm gonna just get out of here so it's easier. There we go. On the bottom left of your screen now, on the webinar interface, you'll see a button that says mute, and it's got the little microphone icon or the phone icon. You see that? Might be on the...
Are you talking?
Yeah, for the folks, for Lori and Flora, yeah.
Yeah, I see join audio.
So I'm looking further down the screen than that. There's a black bar, and it says...
Yeah, with the phone?
Yeah, so just beside that, do you see this little arrow there?
Yeah.
And click on that arrow, and it says...
computer audio.
Computer audio. So that should flip you over if you're on... Exactly, yeah. If you're on a laptop and you flip that over, that'll definitely work.
Automatically joined by computer.
There you go, yeah.
And it says test computer and microphone, go there.
That's it, yeah.
Okay. I do hear a ringtone, so I should be fine.
So at least you can hear me, and then the question is only whether you can talk to me. So, but you saw today
that
that almost all...
For you.
Nice, all right. We're not married, Laurie, so no. All right. Okay. My wife is a safe distance away. I can make that joke. Sorry?
Yeah, I'm assuming we're fine, Jason. I'll come in by computer audio next time.
Really appreciate it. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good week.
Yeah, you as well. See you in a couple weeks. Thanks.
Bye.
And Flora, are you still there? I'm just going to bring you off mute, Flora. I can't bring you off mute, Flora. I'm not sure why not. Okay, Flora, maybe if you can just log in a few minutes early next call. I can't get you off mute here, and we'll take care of it then. Okay, I don't know if you can hit me up in the chat box or whatever, but okay, yeah, thanks, Flora. But yeah, if you can try to log in on the computer audio next time, there's a cost to me for people on the phone, and I prefer to avoid that. We don't build that into course pricing. Okay, for everybody that's here for the late session, I'm ending the meeting right now. I have to restart the meeting, Okay, so I know a bunch of you are logged in early, promptly, all that good stuff, and I do apologize, but you're gonna have to log back in.